This is Stephen Janis reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland. I'm standing at the site of the latest pricey tax break that will be given to a developer by Baltimore City. The question is, how much are these subsidies really costing the taxpayers? Well, the Real News took an in-depth look to find out. The site of Baltimore's latest proposed tax break for a developer is here, the rundown Northwood Shopping Center adjacent to the Morgan State University campus. Developers are seeking what's known as a RISE tax break, which will allow them to forego paying property taxes to use the money to build out the site.
And today we stand before you in complete unison and a great partnership with 4 communities: the Hill and Road Improvement Association, Original Northwood, New Northwood, and Stonewood, Pentwood, Winston.
Proponents argued during a city council hearing last week that the incentive would bring a Barnes & Noble and other amenities to the area.
And why should Morgan have those amenities that the students and residents around Towson and UB and the University of Maryland have?
A long overdue move, supporters say, towards equity for a city that has concentrated most of its tax breaks downtown in predominantly white neighborhoods. But during the hearing, a dispute between 2 councilmen, Ryan Dorsey and Eric Costello, revealed much about the inherent conflict over giving tax breaks without first parsing the fiscal consequences.
We don't have a dollar amount. You know, we're being asked to, this committee rather, is asked to support a tax benefit, a public subsidy, in an yet unspecified amount. I am very interested, and many other constituents that I represent. And as this is, you know, money that goes into all of the city's coffers or not, people across the city have an interest in knowing that we are scrutinizing the use of tax subsidies.
Dorsey took aim at the city's largest tax break deal to date, a $600 million TIF, or tax increment financing deal, to a development company owned by Under Armour billionaire Kevin Plank. A tax break that will allow him to plow nearly $600 million of future property taxes into building a veritable city on this waterfront property. Dorsey says the city did not know enough about the deal and voted against the Northwood tax break as well.
You know, while this in no way compares to the TIF that was approved for hundreds of millions of dollars for the redevelopment of Port Covington, in a lot of people's minds, there exists a principle to the matter. In that case, where an outside assessment showed that the financial analysis of their application was fell woefully short of standards of best practice.
But Costello made a startling claim that the Port Covington tax break included the best deal for the community ever.
The study that was referred to was completely biased at best, and that project did result in the most comprehensive community benefits agreement in the history of the United States, valued somewhere in the neighborhood of $135 million. And I would further point out that there is certainly a difference between when certain things are approved and when certain things are executed. And no bonds on Port Covington have been floated yet, not to mention that comparing Port Covington TIF to the RISE zone application for Morgan State would be at best, on a very good day, comparing apples and some type of tropical fruit that I can't pronounce.
To fact check his claim, we talked to former Councilman Carl Stokes, who tried to slow the Port Covington deal before it was pulled from his committee and rammed through the council.
For example, BDC would take numbers from someone who came to them to ask for a tax break or a grant, and we would accept their numbers rather than doing an independent audit. It's something no one else does. The businesses that came to us would not conduct business that way.
Stokes says the lack of scrutiny of the deal was glaring, which brings us here to Annapolis, where the Maryland General Assembly is now in session. Because inside this building, delegates are now vetting legislation that shows just how little is known about the true cost of these tax breaks. The bill would hold the city harmless for the impact of certain tax breaks on school funding. But a fiscal note, which is supposed to inform legislators how much the law could cost, reveals a startling fact. Analysts admit they do not know the long-term price tag of TIFs. Quote, the magnitude of future TIF grants for public schools cannot be estimated.
This just essentially says that the property increase that happens, don't count that as though there is new wealth in the jurisdiction, because the money is reserved to pay off the bonds.
In fact, this bill doesn't cover TIFs like Harbor Point, a $100 million project authorized in 2013, or the dozens of deals to keep new apartment buildings tax-free for years. Couldn't that be a problem going down the road?
It could be down the line. I mean, in 20 years from now, potentially. But I mean, if this provision is put in place, then we would be held harmless for that. I mean, the greatest thing.
Or TIFs, though, not pilots.
Correct. Just for TIFs, yes. So for new pilots or new economic development tools, that's a calculation that the city has to make. There's a cost benefit that is going to have to be determined.
Pilots, or payment in lieu of taxes, allows developers to avoid paying taxes for 15, sometimes 20 years. Nevertheless, we asked the city for more information on the impact of tax breaks and received this, a list of over 100 deals with few details. So the Real News will continue to cover this story, an economic policy that seems to be flying blind, while systemic poverty and economic isolation continues to plague the city. This is Stephen Janis and Taya Graham reporting for the Real News Network in Annapolis and Baltimore.